Say now, this is Billy F. Gibbons saying, have mercy. You tuned in right here to the Vinyl Guide with our good man, Nate. Congratulations on 500.
Welcome to the Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. Here's your host, the biggest record nerd of them all, Nate Goyer.
Well, that's me. Hey, everyone, it's Nate. Welcome to another episode 500 of the Vinyl Guide, the podcast for record collectors and music nerds. And this week, we are so pleased, so proud to welcome back to the show, Billy Gibbons, or Dr. Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top. And we've got an extensive conversation with the man about his vinyl record collection. We talk deep about his vintage guitar collection and many moments of music history. Now, to be clear, Billy needs no introduction. He's as smooth and as cool as they come. And I'm so honored to have him as part of the Vinyl Guide podcast's 500 episode celebration. We're doing this the whole month of June. So many great guests wanted to be part of our 500th episode that we're now doing several episode 500s. Every Monday in the month of June, another phenomenal guests will be presented in the order in which they were recorded. And lots of stuff is happening. We're also giving away vinyl records, one for each day in June. You could register to get a collectible record or three at the website, thevinylguide.com/500. You can also see the loot that we're sending out on our Instagram page at Vinyl Guide. But don't miss it. Make sure you're following the Vinyl Guide in your podcast app. You'll get access to the episodes right away. You're always welcome to join our Patreon page, patreon.com/Vinyl Guide. That's always a huge help to the show. And again, don't forget to enter for some free records at thevinylguide.com/500. Well, enough with the jibber jabber. Let's all look towards Texas and speak to our good friend, Mr. Billy Gibbons.
Hey.
Yo, Mr. Billy.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, excellent.
Okay.
All right.
Got my uniform on.
Let's rock and roll. Now, Billy, thank you for joining us. Now, I understand you've got an honorary doctorate from the Musicians Institute in Hollywood. So technically you're Dr. Billy Gibbons. Is that right?
Well, we go by doctor, reverend, and other things, but I think BFG will do fine for now.
You're a man of science and a man with soul. Well, look, it's great seeing you again. Appreciate you being here on the show. Now, we talk records and all sorts of things. As I understand, you've got quite an impressive record collection, many 78s, yeah?
Yeah. And they are in very good condition, considering that they were so primitive when they first hit the streets. It's a bonus to find them playable in such an appealing aural fashion. Mm-hmm. But that started it, and as I can see behind you, you've got that's where it continued. It went 78s, 45s. You even had 16-inch transcriptions, all kinds of recorded medium, but the LP is still cool.
Absolutely. Do you get to spend much time in front of your record player these days?
Yeah, Elwood and I played DJ on the bus, trying to keep the needle in the groove.
Very good. So you take records on tour. Do you do shopping? Do you still get records while you see record shops and all that stuff while you're on the road?
Yeah, we had a nice meeting with the head of Concord Records, who's in charge of the next BFG solo record, which should be showing some releases coming up before the end of the year. And I was asking, I said, well, what do we think of the record business? And when we say the record business, I'm talking about these cool tactile discs that you can hold, you can read, bigger than a postage stamp. Yeah, but there's about 1,200 bona fide record stores that we know of, possibly more. There's a few hidden out there somewhere, but we try and make the scene.
All right. Do you have any favorite record shops in the world?
Well, Waterloo down in Austin, we're down there so often. But right down the street from the house in Los Angeles, even I've got a little hideaway in Las Vegas. It's in the shadows of that big dome thing called the Sphere, and it's so bright. You don't even need a flashlight. In the middle of the night, I can find my way to a record store, a little secret spot right down an alleyway. But I think that what we want to share is that no matter where you are, you can still track it down.
100%. And we love being in record shops. And I always find that when I find the local record shop, those are my people. And they're generally in a neighborhood that has more of my people. Great coffee shops, great burrito places. That's the community that I like to habitate myself.
Yeah, and 9 times out of Grimey's here in town of Nashville. Mm-hmm. They're another one of those great vinyl stopovers. I like the ones that you stumble across on the sidewalk. There's no sign until your shoulder against the window, and you happen to look over, and there they are.
In your record collection, do you have a prized item? Something that when you think of your record collection, that's something you're very proud as part of it?
Well, I've got a similar setup where the genres are stacked together. I was able to collect a bunch of imports from England when the reissue of the great American art form we call the blues was on its way out until the British resurrected and made the rescue. Those guys, the British are famous for taking whatever subject it is and diving down to the genetics. And it was really cool to see the discovery of this great American art form coming back in forms of vinyl that they were discovering things that had long been forgotten, or a lot of stuff that had never been released previous to that.
Yeah, they caught the wind of Jimi Hendrix before America did, and that's his first record was in the UK.
Yes, we had it.
You had it. How did you get it?
We had a girlfriend in Texas that, oh my gosh, she was absolutely stunning. She had a nickname of Stick. She was about 6'2", skinny as a rail, a neck long as a giraffe. She was the girlfriend of a guitar player that was part of the management firm that the Moving Sidewalks were part of. And I remember it was always fun to go to we used to drive to the beach, Galveston, the beach at Galveston had a nice little surf spot right there off 61st Street, and we'd all go down there, and we'd take that LSD, and I'd look at this girl, and I said, "Whoa, you look like a giraffe." Purple clouds, I remember coming up. She said, "Well, we need to go. I need to be home. My mom's going to be worried." And we drove back and walked in the door, and her mom was there and said, You're late. You kids are on that LSD again." I said, "Well, yeah, but yeah, she's beautiful. You need to send her to New York to be a fashion model," which she did. And she walked into Eileen Ford's agency, and just sleeveless t-shirt, cut off blue jeans, flip flops. You're hired. And she was immediately assigned to a Revlon contract centered in London. And she's the one that found this Jimi Hendrix Experience and sent it back to us in vinyl before it was released in the States. And the Moving Sidewalks got familiar with the material, learned how to play Foxy Lady and Purple Haze. And next thing you know, we're invited to join the Jimi Hendrix Experience tour. And we didn't know how to, the producer wanted us to play 40 minutes. Well, we knew 30 minutes unless we played Foxy Lady and Purple Haze. Someone said, "Wait a minute, you're going to play that before Jimi Hendrix comes on?" And I'll never forget the first night out. We wound up with Purple Haze, the closing number. And as we walked, I saw this guy, arms folded, grabbed me by the shoulder, spun me around. He goes, "I need to get to know you. You got a lot of nerve. I like that." And that's how we became friends.
That was Jimi. Well, I'd rather play. A good thing he played it before Jimi and not after. Would have been a very different result, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Now, I understand you saw Elvis when you were 7. Is that right? 56.
I was 5,
5. Okay.
and that was 1956. My mom took my sister and I to go see Elvis Presley. He was playing in Houston. We were there in Houston, and I was like, okay, that's got our attention. Then I think the next piece to the puzzle was about a year later. My dad was going to ACA Studios to do some business with Bill Holford, the owner. He asked me if I wanted to go to the recording studio, and I said, "Yeah, sure." And he said, "Now listen," he said, "when I get there," he said, "I'll be in the office, but I'm going to put you, I'm going to have you go into the studio because there's a band coming in. You're going to see them make a record." And I was all about it. I was all about it. And in walked B.B. King and his orchestra to see him make a record.
Did you have a lot of records around the house? Do you remember your very first vinyl record?
It must have been a Jimmy Reed. Yeah, it was a Jimmy Reed single.
Mm-hmm.
My mom used to go shopping, and our housekeeper would hand a list to my sister and I. And she said, "When your mom goes shopping, ask her if she can find these records." And there was a great record store in the shopping zone where my mom used to frequent. And she'd take this list in, not knowing what it was. It was all R&B and blues with a few Sun records thrown in.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow. Started off with stellar taste there.
Oh, it was the best. Yeah.
Did you ever bring a record home that made your parents' eyebrow raise?
Well, my sister and I shared a little tabletop record player, and it was not really loud enough to reach the other end of the house. So we got, and what was really funny, the housekeeper, there was Big Stella, Little Stella, Minnie, and Dorothy. And depending on what day it was, they all would congregate. I had the room at the far end of the house, and we'd crank up the little record player, and we just had a blast listening to all of that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The labels. We got to know the labels. We got to read the fine print. Who was the writer? Who was the artist? What's the matrix number scratched in the skip band?
Oh, you were a nerd from the early days.
Oh, crazy about it.
So all your parents were very open to the sort of music you were bringing into the house.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My dad, being in the entertainment business, was a gifted pianist. Someone said, "Oh, yeah, you grew up in a musical household. We know about your dad. He was, when you guys lived in California, he was music director at one of the music directors at MGM Pictures, and then later in Las Vegas. And how about your mom?" And I said, "Oh, my mom was the best. She was probably the most gifted. She knew how to play the radio."
Very good. So you're bringing in this music. It's probably new to your folks, but they had the patience and they had the appreciation for it as well. I imagine your dad, being a pianist, he liked what Otis Spann was doing.
You know, he enjoyed so much the scope and the breadth was such a wide range of inspirational input.
Mm-hmm.
And he started back in the 20s. He had 5 brothers. They have five brothers and a sister. They came from England, 1908, during that great immigration period, and their dad was a glove maker, and they landed in upstate New York in Gloversville, where they made gloves. Mm-hmm. And I asked my dad, I said, well, how'd you get from that to the entertainment game? And he said, well, it's quite simple. We went to have lunch with our dad at the glove factory, and we decided we need to do something quick because we ain't doing that. So they all took up an instrument, and they got really good. They had a little 5-piece combo called the Jazzy Five. They're doing ragtime stuff. But then they got good, and they expanded into a kind of a legit orchestra, and they started playing all the hangouts there, Lake George, Saratoga Springs, but one of the glove makers was this Polish immigrant who was named Samuel Goldfish. And he came to my dad and he said, Freddie, we're going to California. We're starting a new business. He said, I'm changing my name to Samuel Goldwyn. Got a little business there called MGM Pictures. So off they went, and it was just, as you point out, Otis Spann was part of this great background of what inspired my dad.
Wow, that's truly the American dream he lived. So when you saw Elvis, the seeds of being a musician, I imagine, were probably already planted even before then. Was there ever a time where you weren't going into music?
No. I think that seeing Elvis live lit the fuse. And, of course, seeing B.B. King make a record, that kind of sealed the deal. I saw that guitar. Elvis was strumming away, and then B.B. was, hitting the solo licks loud and clear. Mm-hmm. I just, okay, that's for me.
What did the Beatles do for you when they came on the scene? Did you watch Ed Sullivan? Were you impacted by that moment as well?
Well, we heard I Want to Hold Your Hand over the car radio. And, they were singing in an unusual harmony. They were singing in fifths, which hadn't been heard often. But they were playing more than 3 chords. As I mentioned, the first record being Jimmy Reed, that was it. I thought, the 12-bar blues was it. Ray Charles, What Did I Say? But here was something that had really inspiring, interesting changes. We didn't know who it was. And then later we found out, of course, and then boom, big changes coming.
Now, as I understand, the very first time you were on vinyl record was the Moving Sidewalks. Was that the single, the 99 floor? Was that the first time ever?
Yeah, 99th floor. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And do you remember that recording session? What was that like, making that first record?
Yeah, we went to Doyle Jones. We were down in Houston, and the Moving Sidewalks had actually gathered in Houston, and Doyle Jones ran a pretty tight outfit across town. God, he was so inspirational, as he was not only an engineer, he was a producer that had hands on sending local talent into bigger and better places. And then Walt Andrus had another studio across town, which was, but between Gold Star, that was Bill Quinn had Gold Star Sound Services right off of Telephone Road. Lightning Hopkins, a lot of blues came out of Gold Star. Mm-hmm. Bill Holford's place, ACA, across town, that was on the corner of West Gray and Montrose, where was, B.B. King, Little Richard came down. Little Richard came from Georgia, But he was first signed to Peacock Records, which was a label based in Memphis, which was later acquired by an entrepreneur, a black entrepreneur in Houston, who he bought Peacock, which was a gospel label, later became Duke, which was part of the Duke Peacock. And Little Richard came and started making gospel records with a secular backing band that was the Grady Gaines Orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
You can see him in those early rock and roll movies. It was Little Richard on piano with the Grady Gaines Orchestra backing him up. They were from Houston, and that was a lot of those sides were cut at ACA. A lot of them was over at Gold Star. There was another Huey Moe had his place down, the Crazy Cajun label, Teardrop Records. He had all kinds of stuff going on. So Houston was a really interesting hotbed of recording from Texas. That was the Houston School. South of Houston was the San Antonio School. That was T&T, Tanner and Texas record label. And then when you go east, the Houston School, you go east up to Beaumont, Port Arthur, Lake Charles, right at the Louisiana border. And then just beyond that, you came into the New Orleans School. That started at about Baton Rouge. And then you get into New Orleans, and that was Cosmo Matassa. He ran the big studio there in New Orleans.
Okay.
And it changed. It changed. Right there, the Houston School, that was T.K. Hewlin. It was kind of funny. Roy Head, he had Trader Wright. That was on the Backbeat label. But anyway, there was so much, such a rich history.
So Tantara and Wand, those were labels out of Houston. Is that right?
Well, Tantara was local label. Wand was part of the New York Scepter label. That was Flo Greenberg. She was running an R&B label, Scepter and Wand. And what was interesting, one of my all-time favorite records, Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, oddly enough, based in Portland, recorded in Seattle at Jerry Denon's studio, came out first on the Jerden, Jerden, Jerden label. Mm-hmm. That was Jerry Denon, Jerden, the whole thing. It was crazy. I got to know all those guys in the Kingsmen. Mike Mitchell on guitar, Norm Sunholm on bass, mm-hmm. Lynn Easton was actually a keyboard player. He played saxophone. Joe Ely was the singer. And as the story goes, they wound up going up to Seattle. There was one microphone hanging from the ceiling. Louie Louie is recorded on one microphone. Jack Ely had to he had to look up at the ceiling to sing it. It is such a greasy, anyway.
Recorded with one microphone and about 5 cases of beer.
Oh, indeed. But Flo Greenberg heard it and thought they were an R&B act. So she signed the Kingsmen to Wand, and then it blew up. I think part of the magic of that was when the record was considered, it was banned. The FBI came in, and once it got banned, everybody wanted to hear it.
Yep.
Those lyrics, what are they saying?
That's a great way to sell 1 million copies. Tell people they can't have it.
Yeah. I think I've still got a pass around from the 7th grade. Here's the dirty lyrics.
Yeah. Now, it's clear you collect records. You collect a lot of things. You've got quite a massive guitar collection, as I understand. Let me ask you, the guitar that above the others, Pearly Gates. A 59 Les Paul. You still take that on the road with you?
On a rare occasion.
Okay.
Always in the studio. In fact, we were just there a couple hours ago. There's something in the day that instrument rolled off the assembly line. All the elements were in place. And, we're talking about organic, very different. This tree may grow 2 feet away from that tree. They could be harvested on the same day. They could be milled on the same day. But when they come down the assembly line, they're different. Mm-hmm. They grow different. The organic structure is different. Pearly Gates, the right mahogany, mated to a maple top with the right amount of glue and the right amount of lacquer paint. I mean, it's just magic.
All the elements came together for that one glorious guitar. Have you ever tried to find or even played a guitar that was just a couple serial numbers away, something that was maybe made half hour after that one?
Oh, yeah. That's what started this crazy collection. We were looking for another instrument that would equal or come close to the sound of Pearly. We knew early on there was something special about the sound of this instrument, really special. And we kept searching, and as soon as we'd find something, we'd compare it. Oh, no, you better look again. Just yesterday, we were at. I flew into Nashville to do a series of recording sessions, and our good friend who works with. When I go out outside of ZZ Top, I take the BFG band. Mm-hmm. Which is Chris Layton on drums. He started out with Stevie Ray Vaughan. They started together. He's still out there. And I grabbed Mike Flanagan, who's a wonderful keyboardist, bass player, rhythm guitar, you name it. I snagged him from Jimmy Vaughan's outfit. And then Guthrie Trapp. He's kind of this wild man he's a Southern boy that just tears it up. But he called me up and he said, hey, I know you're going in the studio. You got time to stop by Carter Vintage Instruments? I said, yeah, I'm right down the street having Mexican food. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but.
Another guitar? Oh, yeah.
There's 3.
Ooh.
They had, while we were there, 3 Sunburst Les Pauls came through the door. 3. You don't find them within 30 minutes, unsolicited. A first one came in, 20 minutes later, a second one came in, and we're saying, what's going on here? But we played them all. There's something magic about those, the 58, the 59, and the 60 Les Paul, Sunburst Les Pauls. Just great. Now, jumping ahead, our good friend in Valencia, Spain, our dear friend Nacho Banos. Nacho is famous for having recreated reproductions of early Fender Blackguards, Esquires, and Telecasters. He's now decided to extend his talents into reproducing copies of the mid-50s Sunburst Les Paul. And he's doing a fine job. I've actually just recently came from Spain, where I was able to play the first example coming off out of his secret lab. And it's probably as close to what you'd want to hear from that era of magic. He's making them again.
Wow. So that's the closest you've come to a duplicate of Pearly Gates, or an approximation.
Yeah, I would say it's probably, and they're they're reasonably priced at around US dollars. I'd say you could probably pick one up I think let he's going to let him go out the door for, I don't, maybe 7,000.
Oh, okay.
Certainly less. I mean, when you're speaking of an original 50s, mid 50s Sunburst,
Mm-hmm.
they're bringing six figures.
Oh, yeah.
I saw one sell for $475,000.
And that still ain't Pearly Gates. Well, you bought Pearly Gates for $250, right?
Yeah, 250.
All right. Well, you let me know when you want to double your money, Billy.
Okay, man. Yeah, here we go.
I also understand you recently were playing the Albert King Flying V.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that. Is another amazing guitar.
I fell in love with Albert's playing when we were residing in Memphis from about 73. We took a trip out of Texas to mix the tracks that later became the release known as Tres Hombres. And it rendered our first top 10. LaGrange hit the charts. So there it was. We decided to find a second home. Memphis became our second home. We moved to Memphis. And oddly enough, we became friends with another Memphian just across the river. West Memphis, Arkansas, was where Albert King came from. And he was playing just up the street. You could see him on any given night. And he still had an original 58 Flying V. And I decided to present him with a birthday present. There was a very talented guitar maker, Mr. Tom Holmes. I said, Tom, could you make a special, let's call it a special gift, a birthday presentation, Flying V for Albert King. I got to have his name in pearl in the neck. And he said, well, he plays left-handed. Shall we make it proper? Because he plays a right-handed upside down. I said, yeah, let's do it. Let's do a proper left-handed. And he fell in love with it. It was a wonderful playing instrument, kind of fancy, arch top, burgundy color, ivory binding up and down the body and neck.
It's stunning.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's great. Well, when Albert passed away, it went to his nephew, and then it disappeared for the longest time. And then, as the story had it, recently came to learn it went from place to place. And then our good friend, my buddy Robert Johnson from Memphis, Robert and I became really close friends when we showed up in late 72, mixing the record that became the release Tres Hombres. Robert was into guitar collecting with his buddy Mike Ladd. Mike Ladd, his dad was one of the three founding members of Holiday Inn hotel chain. And Mike was given a birthday gift. I think he turned 18. His dad said, here's $20 million. Go do what you want. And he wanted to start a guitar shop, which he did, Mike Ladd's Guitar City. But Mike Ladd could be considered, unfortunately, he just passed away this time last year, but he was one of the first true appreciators of vintage instruments. I say vintage. He knew the value of these instruments that were produced late 40s through the early 50s and mid 60s. And anyway, Robert Johnson and I decided we were going to give a birthday gift to Albert, which we did. Robert recently found that birthday gift that had long disappeared, Albert King's Flying V, which we had given to him in 75. It was that long ago. And it showed up on a Christie's auction. And Robert knew Robert knew the inside, and he said, "Hey, I got to have that guitar." So he acquired it. Price tag unknown, I may add. But just recently, we were doing a combination recording. Albert King, Jim Stewart, and Estelle Axton, they own Stax Records. They paid the Swampers to do 10 tracks. It was going to be a 10-song Albert King recording. And Albert said, "I'll do it." I said, "I want $5,000 in cash. I want it in a shoebox, and I'll be there." Well, they got 5 songs done, and they were growing a little fatigued. And they said, "Albert, I think we're all getting tired." He said, "Why don't we come back in the morning? We'll start over again tomorrow and finish it up." Albert said, "Well, yeah, where's my 5,000?" And they said, "Oh, we'll bring it tomorrow. We got it. We'll bring." He said, "No, I need it now." He said, "Well, we're going to have to wait until tomorrow to get it." And that wasn't good enough. Albert folded his tent, got on the bus, and went on tour. Never finished the record. 5 tracks done, 5 tracks later to be released. Well, go back in 72, same story. They had 5 tracks. Stax Records had 5 tracks on Albert, and that was it. They also had 5 tracks on Little Milton. That was it. They combined them, and they released the combination called Chronicles, and it became a runaway bestseller. Side 1 was Albert. The other side was Little Milton. So Robert Johnson bought that 10-track reel of tape. Albert was 5 tracks. He called me up. He said, "We're going to do Chronicles 2. Albert on one side, you got to finish out the other 5."
So
we played it on Albert's Flying V.
So it's the Swampers behind you on Albert's. Yeah. It's just you channeling through that Flying V.
Yeah. It was automatic. It was absolutely stunning.
Oh, fantastic. Any idea when we're going to hear that?
Well, it's due for release soon. I'll have to call Robert and get the exact. I know that they had taken it into editing, and final mixing was completed, so it's ready.
2025 sounds good.
They want to. They're doing a, I believe, Concord record label, which I'm due to release the BFG next solo here in 2025. They acquired the Stax Vault catalog with everything except this one reel, which is what they want. And I think that if memory serves me correctly, I think Robert had done some negotiating to see that it was a proper Stax release. We'll see.
That's the crown jewel in the crown. That sounds fantastic.
I'm anxious to see it in vinyl.
Yes. Now, I understand you've got a big guitar collection. You have picks and a guitar slide made out of a meteorite. Do you have any famous guitar artifacts or anything connected to the original Robert Johnson?
I wish I could say so. The guitar that he's pictured with, for the longest time, initially there was a suspicion that there was not a known photograph of Robert Johnson. Well, my buddy Robert Johnson from Memphis, no relation, of course, Robert called me up and he said, "We're going down to Clarksdale. I have been introduced to Robert Johnson's sister." And I said, "You're kidding." He said, "No, we're going to go." And we went down and met Robert Johnson's sister. And she had that famous photograph, the the photo booth picture, the one that later became a
with the cigarette. Yeah.
And later subsequently it was acquired by another gentleman. And then, of course, there was the second discovery. So the two, and then have you heard about the third?
I heard.
There is the third suspected photograph of Robert Johnson. That was unveiled from our good friend up in New York. Actually, he was working at a famous vintage guitar store in Manhattan. But that opens up another story. So in fact, I was just down in Clarksdale last week. They're celebrating Muddy Waters Month at the Delta Blues Museum. And we had a celebration. I was presented with a proclamation from the governor of Mississippi and the mayor of Clarksdale, celebrating the muddy wood guitar, which is still a big part of it's the iconic instrument that gained the attention of the U.S. government, provided the funding to provide the expansion of the Delta Blues Museum, which started off as a one room in the Clarksdale Library, now the freestanding building that is known as the Delta Blues Museum. It's wonderful.
Wow.
That's cool.
I've seen going back to Robert Johnson, that third picture. I have it on good authority. There's two more out there. You know that dime store photo that he took with the team? That wasn't an only picture. There were two others that came with it. They used to take those in a series of 3.
Oh,
so they are out there. There is a collector that I'm aware of that is currently, I hope I'm not blowing the cover there, but those two apparently do exist. They're known, very underground, but they're trying to make a deal to where they'll see the light of day.
yes. Now, as we were talking about any artifacts from Robert Johnson, I met there was a musicologist based in Houston named Mac McCormick, and I became friends with Mac. Mac had gone down and did probably some of the deepest research surrounding the mystery and the mystique that circled Robert Johnson and how he became this mythical figure even today. But he was sworn to secrecy until the day he passed away, and his notes and findings are soon to be revealed. It's rather fascinating. It deepens. Maybe those pictures will marry up, and the story will deepen.
Well, I wasn't going to reveal the name, but that is a very familiar name in this whole story of the additional pictures. Very, very instrumental.
So the guitar that Robert is seen holding, it was a parlor-sized Gibson, maybe a Kalamazoo. They're not sure. The rumor has it that it's still in the possession in Memphis from some long lost relation down the line who became an attorney, a black gentleman who I think still either resides in the Memphis area or perhaps conducts business there. I'm not sure, but that's another kind of mystical part of it.
Wow. If they could actually verify that that's it, that would be stunning.
Yes.
Holy moly. Well, I also understand you have a you got a guitar from Bo Diddley that had a secret message in it. Is that?
Yeah. Well, the secret, anything Bo Diddley is a secret message. I think that he invented it. And it's how the planet got cracked open with one chord. It was just the feel. Well, we're fortunate in that there's a lot of film footage where you can see the actual performance unfolding right before your very eyes. That's the secret message right there.
Oh, okay. What I heard you got a guitar. It was from Bo Diddley, and there was a small handwritten note on the inside of that guitar that you found many years later. It said,
"Yes,
play it loud, son."
Yeah. I was talking with Fred Gretsch Jr., who he and his wife Dinah reside in Savannah, Georgia. They are the ones that they acquired they inherited the Gretsch in its entirety. They licensed it to the Fender Corporation, but Fred Gretsch still he owns the name. And I was talking to him. I said, Fred, let's talk about Bo Diddley and those custom guitars from 1955. The Rectangle, the first
cigar box, right?
Crazy. I said the Gretsch, Gibson, Fender, those were considered Martin for acoustics. Those were considered the major guitar manufacturers at the time, but they were not into doing custom work. And how Bo Diddley persuaded Gretsch to create the Rectangle, and then later what he called the Jupiter Thunderbird, and then there was a third one, the Cadillac. 3 crazy designs that Bo scratched out on paper. I've even got a photograph of him at work, surrounded by Clifton James on drums and Jerome Green on maracas. They're sitting at a table with Bo Diddley with pen and paper, scratching out this guitar design. Interesting. But I think that, Bo Diddley's sound came from the early Gretsch instruments, Duo Jet. And then, the Duo Jet, and then the Jet Firebird. But I think that the Gretsch guys on the production line really admired what he had been doing with the Gretsch guitars, and they humored the production line by making these custom instruments. But there were 3 of the Rectangles, 3 of the Jupiter Thunderbird, and 2 of the Cadillac. And I picked up one of the Rectangles, had been abandoned, and it was in a guitar shop, a repair shop in Ohio. We were off the road. We had a day off, and this guy said, "Yeah, man." He said, "We got this. Bo Diddley doesn't want it." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, one of them Rectangle guitars. He came in, he left it for repair. We fixed it up, but he never came back. He said he doesn't want it." So I was able to purchase it. And then later, one of the first paying gigs, ZZ Top was hired to back up Bo Diddley. We did this roundabout thing, Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry. And I think that he was entertained by the fact that we knew how to play his stuff with accuracy. And he said, "Yeah," he said, you want that guitar?" And later that was the second instrument, and that one went into production after Fred Gretsch licensed the Gretsch production to the Fender folks. Mike Lewis at Fender called me up and he said, we're reproducing all of the Gretsch instruments. He said, but we've seen you with a Gretsch instrument that we cannot find it in the file. I said, you're talking about the Bo Diddley one. I said, go look at the album cover. Bo Diddley is a gunslinger. You'll see it at his ankles laying in the dirt. He said, yeah, that's it. And he said, we think you've got it. And I said, yeah. And he said, we'd like to reproduce it. And I said, well, you're going to have to get the permission from Bo Diddley. And he said, okay, yeah. So I called Bo, and Bo said, yeah. He said, you know those folks? I said, yeah. And I said, well, they've got this fair trade with all of the, if you were going to get paid, it was all, everybody got paid the same. Well, they were going to give me half and Bo half. I said, no, what I get, Bo gets, and it ain't going to be split half. He said, no, man. He said, I'm taking all of it. I said, okay.
He wants a shoebox with $5,000 in it.
But they released it. They produced it quite nicely. It was we called it the Billy Bo. It's still in production. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, Billy, it's been an absolute honor to have you on the show. I want to be respectful of your time. We've done the show now 500 episodes. Absolutely honored to have you a part of it. We appreciate all the history that you share with us. You're a collecting guy like we are. You appreciate those artifacts, hold them in your hands. So, Billy, long may you run, mate.
Well, thank you very much. It's along the lines of what you and I both love. How many guitars you got? How many albums you got? Is it 500? I said, well, one's too many. 500 ain't enough. So I'll let that be. I'll say have mercy and congratulations on 500.
Thank you, Billy. Much appreciated.
Let's go for more. Let's go for more.
Yeah. What a beautiful soul, that Billy Gibbons. Thank you so much, Billy, for joining us here on another episode 500 of the Vinyl Guide. Again, everyone, don't forget to make sure you're following this podcast in your podcast app. And again, everyone, don't forget we are giving away records the month of June. You could register for that at thevinylguide.com/500. And of course, you could follow us and see the loot that we're sending out on our Instagram page at Vinyl Guide. And again, we'll be back shortly with another episode 500 coming your way. Make sure you're following us in your podcast app, and something new and interesting will be showing up shortly. Thanks again for listening to the Vinyl Guide podcast. Cheers.